How do you go about designing a world that no one's ever seen before? Well, my personal opinion is the first thing you do is let go of the idea that it has to be completely original. There's this inbuilt fallacy of being an artist that you always want to be the most original, the most different, the most new thing on the block. And often that leads to massively overthinking where you go. I'm not going to say I'm the ultimate authority on anything I'm talking about. Really, in any of the videos that you see here, realistically, I'm someone who's a jack of all trades and a master of none, but I like to think that's still better than one. I've done a lot of different things, and my background and what I went to school for was visual design and illustration. And that leads to my personal feelings that a lot of concept work in sci-fi right now has a tendency to be a bit overcooked. I have friends who work in concept art, and I'm endlessly blown away by the stuff that they pull off and the beautiful, beautiful images they put out. But there's this want from producers and directors, especially on larger budget projects, to endlessly iterate and reiterate designs until the initial spark that might have made it really interesting is almost entirely put out under layers of perfectionism. This is in no way me trying to say that I don't think there's truly gorgeous work being done right now. I actually think the problem is that a lot of the work right now is too gorgeous. If you look at any of the major motion pictures being released right now that are super design heavy, have a lot of VFX, what often ends up happening with them is they look a little too crisp, a little too clean. If you compare them to projects from the 80s and 90s, and frankly, we all compare ourselves to the 80s and 90s in filmmaking because that was in many ways our golden era. They had more fun with it. They didn't feel that they had to do 30 iterations just to prove that their original idea was the right idea. They often were given leeway to just go with their first idea. There are so many cases where a monster that we've all come to utterly love and adore really just started with a sculptor being given a task to make it, with no particular direction or even any particular guidelines of how they're needed to look. Often just being told to make it without any particular guidelines or restrictions on their creativity, and they weren't asked to make it 30 times, they were asked to make it once. Now, this isn't me saying that it's a good idea to underwork your projects either. There's this fine line. There's a fine line between just enough and a bit too much that I struggle with too, and I think it's a lifetime endeavor to really figure out where it is. I want to talk about AI for a moment. In my opinion, AI is never the answer. I know filmmakers that are being lured into its grasp by its ease and its availability. I know studios are falling over backwards to incorporate runway and find ways to eliminate more and more jobs for humans. I personally think it's a terrible idea. I'm not going to say that I'm a Luddite who completely thinks every aspect of AI is completely wrong and needs to be eliminated. I use AI features in Resolve all the time to help me with audio. But to me, there's a very large difference between a tool that's meant to streamline a work process versus something that completely replaces a human being's touch. And generative AI completely replaces a human's touch with homogenized bullshit. I know there's a lot of people that make excuses for its budget friendliness or the fact that you can iterate really fast or it's a jumping off point. And I've never once seen an AI image outstrip what a human being can do. Not because a human being does something weirder or even necessarily more original, but because the human touch elevates it into thought. An AI will just spit out something based on a prompt you give it, whereas a human being will actually think about what you asked for, and usually, I won't even say usually, every time, take it further. A concept artist isn't just a machine that spits out pieces based on what you ask for and reiterates and reiterates and reiterates. A concept artist is a thoughtful human being who spent years learning design language and understanding how things work and trying to elevate base concepts to their highest level. An AI will give you bullshit. I have seen my friends and I myself have lost more jobs than I care to think about to this new onslaught of AI bullshit, to this new onslaught of AI. And frankly, it's sad because filmmakers that rely on AI are cheating themselves as much as they're cheating other people. If you don't know how to draw, maybe the act of figuring out how to put your stuff on paper, how to mood board, how to find people that are willing to communicate with you, maybe that's what made your film great. But when you just type a couple of words into an AI generator, what did that do? Did that help you? Did that really construe what you were trying to say? Was that making art? No, it was typing a couple of words into a prompt generator. Filmmakers who are falling over backwards to the ease and rapidity of AI tools seem to not be understanding that they're actually cheating themselves more than everyone else, because it's just creating a false perfection that really says nothing. I'm not even going to get into the copyright aspects, or the European Union seems to be suspect on even allowing films with AI aspects attached to it into distribution. I don't even know where that's currently standing because I'm a little bit out of touch with the latest rounds of news on it. But frankly, I don't see a world where generative AI is ever going to make a better product. All it's going to do is make a homogenized thing that stole from something else. I don't see a world where AI is ever going to make a movie better. It might make a movie faster. It might allow you to not have to hire as much crew. But end of the day, what's the point? If you're not willing to put up the struggle to make a movie with people in the real world, why are you doing this in the first place? Why are you turning your creativity over to a machine instead of owning what you want and creating it? With Bounty, I wanted to come at it from a direction of, I wanted to feel old. It's an aesthetic I particularly liked. I based some aspects of the story on Ancient Aliens, and I liked the idea of there being this megalithic, stone-based vibe to a lot of the things you'll be seeing on the planet. Now, I'm just getting started on doing some of the map paintings and 3D models that'll lead to really giving this the feeling of an alien world. Right now, most of the scenes look like a couple guys walking through the woods. But what I really want this to have is this slightly eerie undertone of, what is this place? Why is it abandoned? Who lived here before they got there? The whole concept is that the planet is fairly riddled with alien architecture and remnants of some culture that was vastly ancient and nobody really knows what it is. And so when you're doing that, you can't just go willy-nilly. You do actually have to commit to a design aesthetic because you're creating a culture through the artifacts they left. It's actually almost more important than the way they look, is what was their design aesthetic? Was it brutalist? Was it Art Deco? Was it Gothic? How did they see their world? Now, when you're doing a project like this, sci-fi with a lot of heavy design work, a question that comes up is how much concept art do I actually need? Especially if you're a director or someone who's not used to working with a large team. I've been a production designer and art director for enough years now that I've worked with crews of all size. And the invariable truth that I've found is the amount of concept art you need is directly proportional to how many people are involved with the project. If you are directly doing almost everything, like I am with Bounty, the amount of concept art you need is really dependent on how much do you need to keep yourself consistent across the project. Do you need turnarounds of everything? Do you need textures of everything? Do you need absolutely everything worked out ahead of time? Probably not. You can get away with a more minimal workflow. You just need to know, what do I need to be consistent across the entire project? What do I need to make sure that everything looks like it fits in the same world? If you're working with a crew of hundreds, concept art is beyond vital and probably the most important thing you can do. The Russo brothers famously have talked about how they will spend months with concept artists working up images that are key images for an entire sequence that they make sure the entire crew works off of. Because when you have a crew the size of Endgame, you need everyone on the same page. So having key art that really makes your statement clear is probably the most vital thing you can do. When you're dealing with a crew the size of Bounty, which was myself and a few individuals, it's more about clear communication. I didn't need everyone to necessarily understand exactly what I was doing. I needed them to just do what I knew would work for what I would do in the end. Now, that led to a few problems. Specifically, there's a whole sequence in a spaceship that I won't say is necessarily going to 100% work because I didn't have concept art. I didn't have time to do concept art of how it was going to work. And so explaining the whole thing to the actors on the day became a little bit more of a task than it probably should have, because if I just had a few images to construe that nicely, it would have gone much better. So in the future, if I was doing something like this again, I would do a little bit more concept art on the front side, so I had better images to keep concise discussions on the day instead of having to break everything down and really talk it out. Especially when you're doing green screen sequences where actors are just trying to wrap their head around the whole thing and you need everyone on the same page. I would say that was one of my biggest learning experiences on this. Is I do actually wish I'd done more concept art for the green screen processes. If I get into the mindset of how you go about creating something new, the truth is, at this point, there is almost nothing new. Everyone's riffing on everyone else. That doesn't mean steal. It doesn't mean you're ripping off anyone. And you definitely don't want to, trace over someone else's work and call it your own. It's more understanding everyone is influenced by everyone else, and it's okay to have your influences. You're not going to make something that is 100% unrecognizable, because usually if you go that far, you've broken the audience's suspension of disbelief so much that they actually are struggling more to understand what you're trying to show them. It's more about creating something where the context is new, creating something where what you're showing them is a thing of wonder as opposed to a thing of, what the hell is that? The process of developing the world in Bounty has been ongoing, and I wouldn't say I'm anywhere close to being done. I actually am planning to do a couple of fairly extensive videos as I dive into some of the larger map paintings and 3D models that will be peppered throughout some of the footage. And I think we could have some really nice discussions about that. What are your opinions on concept art? How do you think it helps a project? Do you think it's vital? If you have any thoughts, I'd love to see your comments below. If you like this content, please think about liking and subscribing. It really helps the channel. I'm trying to grow this, and thank you.